You know, we've taken this as just a base in terms of giving us enough to draft standards per se. If you look at the plan, one of the things, and this is the latest iteration. One of the things that was a concern to us was the amount of separation between the retail, commercial, and the residential. And so we basically had discussions with the prospective redeveloper, and in lieu of just actual distance, we are basically going to, in the plan, require that there be a fairly significant landscape berm to provide separation. The developer also changed some of the unit types to provide more space, more separation between the residential and the commercial components. And again, we're not dealing with a big box store, but some of these retailers are going to have needs for loading in the rear, so we want to make sure that there's adequate protection between the retail component and the townhouse, and we can do that both with physical separation, buffer requirements, Rick, as well as we will spec, I've already had discussions with Jim Slate, a actual berm requirement in order to provide sufficient screening between those commercial activities and the residential townhouses.
But again, just jumping ahead a little bit, so when you draft a development plan, you're going to be looking at this as kind of a template.
Correct.
How you'll spec out the development plan, but then theoretically, more plans could come forth that still fit within that template, but may look kind of different.
Yeah, and we've actually had discussions, even based off this latest concept, with the prospective redeveloper with regard to how some of the townhouses can still be set back. There still can be some offsets within the structures to provide more visual interest. So, and we can write these kinds of things into the redevelopment plan so that both the developer has some flexibility and the planning board, which will review the site plan, will have some guidance in the redevelopment plan to kind of work out in terms of coming up with a plan that's both attractive and also serves the public interest. Not only the future residents, but the surrounding users as well.
And so the townhomes per acre that we're shooting for?
We are going to have a standard that the townhouse area would basically be a maximum of 6 units per acre, which is consistent with your TH6. Now, I will say that the other thing to consider is the ball fields are going to be relocated as part of this plan. You can see it on the lower left-hand. And again, we haven't spec'd that yet, but that was a provision for those fields, which are administered by the municipality, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, under an agreement with the county. We want those replaced. We want them to be in place. Now that area will probably be within the residential land area per se, so that's going to count towards the acreage. But basically, for that area that's in the lighter green per se, it's 6 units per acre maximum, including the affordable rental, which is at a higher net density. That'll all be 6. The redevelopers agreed to stay within that limit and with a 20% set aside, which we think is very favorable to us.
The TH6 is what we did for the Honeywell?
Well, Honeywell, what we did for Honeywell was we did 4 units per acre for Honeywell. A little bit of a different setting in a different context, and also the set aside was, I think, 10% at Honeywell. And you remember at the time, we were still in the sort of COA flux, but we kind of wanted to get something out of Honeywell, and because of the lower density and because sort of the whispered number at the time was 10%, well, we still thought this was going to go through COA rather than the courts. That's why we imposed the 10%. But the theory, as you know, Rick, is that with the higher densities, you can theoretically get a higher set aside. And I will tell you that a 20% set aside at 6 units per acre is very favorable. I know a lot of other projects that are high densities that are actually providing lesser set aside. So in that sense, this is very beneficial to the township.
So, are you going to go over the kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I can just go over it. I've kind of started to, but let me just a couple of other highlights that you can see from the plan. We're probably going to have a requirement. We're going to require a commercial component in the plan, a residential component. We are going to set limits on the amount of acreage that will be retail commercial. It's probably like a limit of, say, no more than 40% of the site. with a minimum and maximum setback from Hanover, so to give some flexibility in the plan per se, with the remaining 60% plus being devoted to the residential and open space. We're assuming an FAR of probably about 20% allowable on the retail commercial component. A lot of your non-residential zones don't have FARs, including the B11, Rick, which is really our only kind of strictly retail commercial. There's no FAR, but in the office zones, it's generally between 20 and 25%. And ultimately, it's all going to come down to parking, because parking drives everything. So based on the concept that the redeveloper's prepared, he is not able to achieve the FAR that we would put in the plan, or the FAR that I think he has in his little chart. And by the way, we're not wed to his charts. He cited the town TH6 zoning standards and the B11. We're not wed to that. We're starting from scratch. This is, as I said to you, redevelopment plans are great. It's legal spot zoning. You can do whatever's appropriate for the site. We're going to come up with our own standards per se. But I think in his, to the left, he was talking about 150,000 square feet, which theoretically we may allow him to do with the FAR, but that plan only has about 120. It's going to be whatever fits to meet coverage, buffer. We're going to require that, we're going to require him to do the 25-foot front green space to parking from Hanover Road. There's going to be a coverage requirement consistent with our ordinance, probably 75% coverage. And with the parking standard, as I said, which drives everything, he's going to get what he's going to get in terms of the commercial. And even his own concept only gets about 80% of what we would allow.